than what I anticipated.
Okay. So what in the third group?
So I had that worksheet ready for them, and we talked about them putting numbers into the problem and just giving them an answer. Well, I went a step further and then wanted to try the advanced learning from 6-1, and we didn't even get to it. Like, there was not even the ones who understood it couldn't really explain why. It was hard for them to articulate how they did it and why they did it, so I knew that it would be best to stick with that just for today and not overwhelm them anyway. And then eventually all of the kids got it. You know, Elliot struggled a little bit, and he's one that fluctuates between the medium and high groups anyway. So I actually did start to kind of like, wow, he really doesn't need to be in this group. But then, you know, he in the end he was able to after he heard Tabitha's explanation and Ryan's explanation. So it was good. It was good to stick with what we had instead of confuse them more.
Right. So when he did struggle, did you say anything or did you ask any probing questions to kind of help scaffold that? Or did you just let others share?
So when I gave him a second example, I mean, he obviously heard what Tabitha had said and Ryan had said, even Chloe. But when I gave him a second example to change the answer to 6, so what could be a problem, I could see him doing on his page 14 divided by 2. So he was playing around with, maybe I couldn't tell if he was continuing to play around with the 7 as an answer or if he was trying to divide something by 2 to get to 6. So I just I said one question and it helped him. It gave him clarity. It sounded like I said I saw he was dividing by 2, so I said, what number could you divide by 2 and get the answer of 6? And so once he found that out, he could plug those numbers in, and he knew right away. So one scaffolding question, and then he had it.
Okay, so that kind of helps you know for him, he may need directions in a different way, or just kind of being mindful about saying, you know, what number could you divide to get 2, but then also wording it the way you did for the other kids, so he knows those two things mean the same thing. That might be helpful to him.
I'm not sure if I should let him struggle at first, or since we know that about him, do I say that? Do I pose the question to everybody and immediately say, Elliot, here's what we're doing? I mean, or do I let him struggle because he's in the high group already, so he doesn't struggle a lot anyway. I don't know.
Well, and you know him better than I do, so I don't know what his struggle capacity is. So sometimes it's better to let him try things out and come to that realization on his own. Yeah,
he's not one to get frustrated really quickly, so I do think he could handle that.
At least you know a wording that will get him to that answer rather quickly. Okay, when you think about the student engagement portion that I was tracking, how did you, before we even look at the data, what was kind of your gut feeling about how that went?
I thought the mini lesson, I would say there were 3 or 4 kids that were off task, namely Mallory, and hard to turn and talk for some kids still in January. Then I thought we did a nice job during the small group, those manila papers. Remember, because we talked about how my kids, when I ask a question to one kid, they just assume they don't need to be listening. It's not to them, so why? So we have had conversations about that and just realizing, well, how powerful that is. And basically what I said is, you know, for that 60 seconds, Tristan is the teacher then. Like, he's explaining his answer, he's the teacher. And Chloe's the teacher during that. And so that helps them kind of realize how important it is to be listening to him. So the manila folders over did help. So I thought the small groups went well. And the independent practice, I saw that they were engaged. And then when I went around, obviously to check during reflection, it was a short page, so they did seem, there was 1, 2, including Mallory, who did not answer that correctly.
Get that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at the data. So I shared this document with you, and it's called Red Egg Data for Students.
Engagement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, so now it's just kind of a hodgepodge of things just because I was typing all over. But the one thing that really stood out to me was there were no interruptions. Like, I didn't notice any of your kids coming up to you in small groups.
Yes. Good.
Were there that I didn't see? Because I was.
I mean, it's hard with Mallory, but no.
Mallory.
And no, I was going to say Caitlin was trying to use the restroom, trying to go to the bathroom, and I told him ahead of time, I was like, I know this is normally when we take it, we can't do that today, you have to hold it. But she didn't do that at an inappropriate time, so I think, she's the one,
So she asked you during a transition?
Caitlin did? Yeah.
To go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Mallory...
Yeah, we really need to think about her.
Yeah. But other than that, yes,
you're right.
We have been.
Because I left the game and she was overstanding by you. So we need to definitely kind of put a plan in place for her about when is an appropriate time to leave your space and seek help from a teacher.
Right. And it's even like what is going to be the best form of instruction for her. Because, we're exploring the idea of her not even being in a small group. But... she still wasn't able to answer those problems correctly.
Right. Did you work with her at all one-on-one today?
No.
Or was it just from the group lesson that she should have got that?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So yes, we had talked about pulling her over for 2 minutes before that. No, I haven't gotten that. Since this is the second day of doing that, I do want to do that. You are right. I need to do that.
Well, and just by working with her, the biggest thing that really stood out to me was just the vocabulary is hard for her to understand the difference between the number of groups and how many in each group.
And she has a language IEP, so
because there was some confusion with the wording, and I kept trying to go back to the wording to reinforce that. So is that the circles or the tallies? I would ask her, but she had the hardest time going 1 1 1 1 1 1. It was 8.
Same with Carter. Carter did that.
Every time it was like these random numbers, really large, and I was like, okay, remember, you want to start and you want to go one at a time, and even at the very end, she, it was like 39 and 35, and I think she had like 6 or something. So that's something. When you look forward with instruction on her, it would just be numbers under 10.
Yes,
so just
I agree.
10 counters, and what's 10 counters in 5 groups, or 9 counters in 3 groups, and just have really small amounts and make sure she goes 1 1 1 1 1 1.
So it sounds like maybe. Well, I don't know if the interactive student edition is going to be our ticket. I don't know. I don't know. But instead of doing the math workbook, I am thinking that maybe I should just have a worksheet for her.
Right.
Instead, a different
and maybe even
practice.
harder too. Because ideally, if you could fold those two together, then they could talk to each other. That might be one way to help support those two, because those were really the only two. Liam was more, and when you look down at the composing section, it's like on the top of the 3rd page. I showed that Liam, he sat down and he got one problem done, and then he was just a wandering eye. So I'm not sure if maybe we need to give him, Liam, in this 5 minutes, I want your goal to be, how many problems do you think you can get done? So maybe he can challenge himself in a way to kind of push himself, because he was just kind of looking around and not really engaged until I went and said, hey, Liam, do you need some help with that? And he's like, and he just looked down and started working. So it was just, I feel like that was more of an attention thing, and he worked the entire time. Anaya, she was really easily confused by the circles. At the end of your group, I pulled her off to the side.
Because she couldn't do the exit slip.
Well, she kept saying the total.
Yeah, I see, and that is something that if for the kids who aren't quite grasping that the opposite of multiplication is, then they're continuing to count up all of the circles. That would be something Carter would do too.
Yeah.
So
So at the end, after she had finally figured out the problem, I said, "What was confusing to you on that?" And she said, the word per.
Yeah.
It said number per group, or I'm trying to think what the excess slip said.
But that's good. That needs to be vocabulary.
And then I said, was there anything else that was confusing? And she said, well, I thought it was asking for how many in all, like how many total. And so I think just really focusing in on that vocabulary with those, I don't know how many kids, Mallory, Carter, Anaya, Liam seems pretty good, but that reinforcement of the vocabulary might be helpful. But I think just the more you can reinforce those words and kind of think through what might trip them up ahead of time. So when you see the word per, preface what that means before maybe sending them off with that, because it's probably not a word they've experienced before. And then Kendrick, there was one problem that he struggled with on just breaking it down. It was the one about the 3 shelves, and there were 3 stacks of 5 CDs per shelf. And I think, I'm not sure if it actually said per on there, but that might be another example of the confusing vocabulary. But once we talked through the problem, he had no troubles figuring it out.
That's good.
Mallory, I kept saying, so how could you solve that? How could you solve that? But she just kept going back to those multiple tallies. And then I did ask her, so what would that division problem look like? Just because she wanted so badly to go to the game, I needed to know if she could make that transfer from here's the circles and the dots to here's a dice, I'm going to roll it, and then I'm going to have to write out a problem. And so I said, what would the division problem look like? And she drew the circle and the dots, and I was like, oh, okay, we're really not ready for the game. So I think you're right, that a kid like her would definitely need some scaffolding prior to that game. Let's take a look at starting at your crafting. Your interest was really high. You caught their attention with Bugs Bunny. All the students were watching. I'm at the top of page 1. Time on task. There were 3 partnerships that were slow to partner. So that's not a lot, but the quicker they can partner.
Yes.
The one thing that really stood out to me is the times you gave them a moment to think. Because in that think, pair, share, they really need, they need us to say, go ahead and take a second to think about that, and then share. Otherwise, they try to share without really thinking.
Well, that literacy breakfast. I've been trying to do that because
Well, and you did say it a couple times. You said, go ahead and think for a second, and then we'll partner. So I thought that was a great strategy. Your engagement with Hands Up could use some work because it continued to be the same kids over and over.
I noticed that, like, in that moment, I was like, oh, man.
Right.
So, think about it when people are watching you.
Right, of course. So maybe for the next time we meet, we can kind of try to come back with ideas on how do you get those kids that don't ever participate to participate. I know some people have used sticks before, and the class dojo where you just hit the button and it comes up with a student. So I don't know, because I don't know your class, like, socially, if that would give them huge anxiety if you just call out of the blue.
Well, Allie, I'm sure you've seen her multiple times from working. I love her agree, disagree.
And that's a really
tracking. I mean, every single time she asks somebody, it was, when I watched her, it was pretty much like after every single question, agree or disagree. Oh, I don't see your hand. I'm not sure what you're thinking. Can you show me? Like, every single time. I know that's a lower skill. I'm just, some kids could get away with not doing that, but.
Right.
Yeah.
And it might be something that you start with at first and then move to something else because you're going to have to change it.
Right, yeah.
But it will give you a quick at-a-glance knowledge of who gets it and who doesn't.
Yes.
And the other thing I noticed was there was a time when some kids put their hands up, some kids shook their head, some kids said no. And so I think just, you know, and that's the thing that I did notice is you were pretty intentional about your questioning. Like you would ask a question and you would have multiple kids share, which I think is great, but I'm not sure that they always know which strategy to use.
So true. Yes, I agree.
So just from the whole group takeaways, what would you think of one thing that you could take away from what we just talked about to try to work on in the future?
This is an aside because I want to think whole group too, but I'm really worried about Mallory. So like that's obviously going to be something that I would like to explore. But as far as whole group goes, I think that I would be looking for ways to get them better prepared for the independent practice piece, so that every single kid is on task for that 12 minutes. Because the game, if it's enough fun, they're going to do that. I've got control of my back table. It's there that they're actually having to do the work, and that's probably where they're going to get the most growth. So if they're not using that 12 minutes productively, I would be worried that that's just lost on them. And it's a really valuable piece.
And during the whole group, I saw, all the students were either looking at you or looking at the ladder when you were talking about that, and then all eyes were on the screen or they were on you when you were doing the problem. So I felt like the engagement there was really pretty strong. You know, Jeremy was the only one who didn't draw his boxes right away. So I feel like that whole group part, they were on task, they were following directions. But you're right, I feel like them talking about the work will make it easier for them to carry
to do that
over.
2 minutes thing.
Well, in whole group, when you try to experiment with different ways to get the kids to raise their hand, because you only had about 10 kids that really participated. So finding new ways that we can get all of those kids to turn and talk right away, and try to get that more concrete, so then when they go back they are more confident. I know we're about out of time.
That's fine, she's there till
but the only other thing, just looking at the data, was you praised a lot, with, good job, and then I like how you said you would rephrase what they said. That was powerful, because for those kids that couldn't hear that answer, that kind of reiterated to them what they did correctly. For your lowest kids, I feel like we still just need to, when you look at that third page, in your small groups, they're still just all at such different places. So I don't know if we need to put like those 3 that really struggled here together. And then the rest of them, because the rest of them did pretty well.
Like Jillian there's a stark difference between Jillian and Carter, yet they're always in that group together, because they always do perform very low, on assessments or even formative assessments. So I agree.
Is there anything else from on the game, the low group? They got started pretty quickly. There was one little guy who was partnered with Jeremy that didn't know what to do. But other than that, they started fairly quickly. And they were doing it correctly, so they were on task. So then that's when I went over and I helped Mallory. But you're not always going to have that. So I think for the next time we meet, let's look through and let's see if we can kind of research and find some strategies that we can use with her individually. And maybe even, I don't know if it's like some sort of a plan that we put her on, that, these are the reasons that you leave your seat. You don't leave your seat for any other reason. And just give her really scaffolded work so she won't have questions. And then thinking through ways to get your kids on the whole group.
Yeah. Okay.
Strategies on how we can get them all to participate. Because they all know it. It's just that building confidence, I feel like, to let them share it out loud.
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay. Thanks so much. I'll email you when we get a time that we can kind of meet and work on that. It'll probably be sometime next week. That way we have the rest of this week to gather resources and things.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, guys.